The healing of the son of a nobleman, John 4:47-53, Sermon 46/20th, Sunday after Trinity, April 27, 1872, received from Jesus through Gottfried Mayerhofer. This chapter tells how I restored a dying child to health through the Word alone. It proves to you the power of the Word and how, accompanied by a firm will, it can accomplish things that would seem impossible to the average person. This nobleman also experienced this when, on returning home, he was told by his servants who hurried to meet him that his child had been restored to life at the moment when I had spoken the significant word. First, I wanted to show my disciples and followers that here was a man of higher rank, that he was also a heathen, and finally, that his test, as a firm believer, was to open the eyes of all present to that which they still lacked above all else. On another occasion, I had already told the Jews that everything would be taken away from them and given to the Gentiles, because they, the first chosen, were stubborn enough not to accept me in my mission. Therefore, this grace would be taken from them and given to the Gentiles, with whom my teaching would find better soil. I wanted to demonstrate that not only simple people of the lowest class would come to me, but that also people of a higher rank and education in the sciences were not ashamed to hurry to me and entreat me for help by word and deed. In this case, it was not just belief in my power, but rather the love for his child that brought this Roman to me, because for him, conviction followed only after the healing. That is why I said to him, "Except the see signs and wonders, you will not believe." I said this knowing well that after the healing of his child, this man could not help believing. He was faced with a tangible fact, a child restored to health instead of a dead one. The most important point, however, was the third. I wanted to show my disciples and other reverers of my word, by example, that with all my acts, the main factor needed was the supplicant's trust in my word, which they often lacked. Thus, this event was apt to show them that one who firmly believes and trusts in my word will never be disappointed. The nobleman, who had to cover quite a distance to his house, left me with the firm conviction that his son would live. Because of my words, thy son liveth. This trust and firm belief in my words, which can and should always be there, is what I wanted to demonstrate to my disciples and listeners. Thus, this act was of benefit to those around me, for I made sure to explain to them the three reasons and my purpose behind it. There were skeptics too. Even the nobleman was a skeptic, despite his faith in me. He found out from his servants at what time his sick son's condition had improved, and only when he had learned that it had happened at the moment when I told him so did he become firmly convinced of my deity, and he and his whole house believed in me and my mission. Now this example being a link in the great chain with which I wanted to fasten and permanently establish. My teaching on earth shows you that good success is achieved only through the firm belief of the supplicant. Now, too, I want to remind you that you cannot expect satisfactory results without a firm trust in me and belief in the promises I often make you. Just as in the healing of the body, it is not the physician alone who restores health, but the faith in him and in the effectiveness of his remedies is often the main factor which brings about recovery. Thus, with every supplication to me be it for spiritual or worldly things trust and faith in me are the most powerful levers by means of which fulfillment can be expedited and realized. Such firm trust actually binds me to grant my child's request. Where else could fatherly love manifest itself if not in the granting? Surely not in the refusing. I have already spoken to you earlier about trust, and recently also about belief, and now I shall talk about both of them, but in a different sense. Here, trust shall be interpreted as confidence in me, and belief not as the most powerful lever for one's own performance, but as a firm conviction in the weight of my words and promises. That nobleman in the gospel had that confidence and strong conviction that my words could not fail, so he went home comforted. He was convinced that he would find his child recovered. Can you conceive of faith so powerful in the heart of a father that he did not insist on my coming to his house, but believed my words and assurance, although the life of his only child was at stake? Where have you shown a trust like that too, whom I have showered with so many words of grace, often actually proving how I am always with you? Admit honestly and freely that you are still far behind this man in the gospel where faith and confidence are concerned. You lose heart at the slightest misfortune. You rush to my scribe and ask for direct messages from me, since you are still deaf to my voice that so often would like to comfort you in your heart. This is how you are, you who would like to belong to the chosen. Through this example, I want to return you to the right measure of self-esteem, so that you may recognize what is still lacking in you and how remote you still are from the actual attainment of rebirth. If you, the privileged, are like that, what am I to expect of those who do not have these words of grace, who are thrown about in the whirlpool of the world, and notwithstanding my warnings and the suffering I allow to befall them, cannot come to their senses? In this message, I want to show you where the landmark for your questions to me should be, so that you do not keep asking my advice at every opportunity. Every one of your questions to me proves your lack of confidence, trust, belief, your lack of comprehension of my words, and lack of understanding of what it actually means to want to ask me. If you had the right conception of my greatness and my holiness, then you would find the truth of my words in the Gospels, established with which I have already answered your often foolish questions. My purpose was to explain to you all the secrets concerning my nature, your hearts, my coming to the earth, and my return in the time to come. However, since you are still far from comprehending what a Creator and Lord of the universe actually is, you often put silly questions to me, which I of course do not answer as the Lord, but as a patient and loving Father. However, you should really ponder with more maturity what the many messages are, for that I have so far given you through my scribe. You shall not only read them, copy them, and bind them. No, you shall strive to make them part of your own self. Through them you shall learn more and more to understand my entire material creation, the true value of worldly things, and your mission and position in the universe. In the tiniest atom and mote floating in the air, and up to the greatest, most distant star, which, as a central sun, sends you its light across millions and millions of miles everywhere, you shall recognize your Father, who, notwithstanding his greatness, appears mightiest in the minutest and humblest things. Such contemplation should prove to you that his words are as true and effective as the language of his creation, and how great, boundless, kind, and loving he is. His promises must be believed implicitly, for they are not the words of a finite being, but of an infinite supreme being who, within a humble human form, condescended to give you proof of the greatest humility and self-abnegation. Learn from the nobleman in the gospel what it means to trust in my word. In his immense grief over the imminent loss of his child, he set my words above his grief, trusted in me completely, and was not disappointed in his expectations. I used this parable from the Gospel of John to set a standard not for all future mankind, but for my chosen, how to understand and trust my words, for only if they have true confidence in me can they hope to awaken a similar confidence in others. Otherwise, They would be like the majority of your priests, who preach something they do not believe in themselves. In this way, my kingdom cannot be established on earth. If you want people to follow you, you and all the chosen of the future must first set a good example, as once my disciples did. Take an example from this nobleman. Become strong in trust and belief. Then you will have tranquility and peace, which you will be able to spread all around. Amen.